Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this week's webinar, which is working through the Crisis Productivity Programme. Good. If you've got anything that you want to share from the past week, it'd be good to hear some good news, some stories or some challenges that people have had. So please, while we're waiting for other people to join and just get a little bit of housekeeping out of the way, just type anything that you want to share in the Q&A box. That would be great. Neil, City of Lincoln have started distributing their small business grants. Yeah, great. You've received yours. Good news, Neil. Hope everyone else who is eligible has been receiving theirs. Yeah, it does seem to be coming out. There are still some people who haven't provided bank details. So if you haven't had anything from your local authority, if you don't actually pay them any money and you haven't given them bank details, then it's really important that you provide them, give them a call, find out if there's an online form or there's a form that needs filling in. I know some people aren't necessarily from the City of Lincoln, but if you've not heard anything from your local authority regarding the small business sort of rate grant, which is a £10,000, if you've not heard anything about that, and of course you need to occupy premises to get that, and not work from home or have a virtual office, which is much to my dismay. But if you don't actually pay them anything, it doesn't matter. You can still get the grant, but you need to give them your bank details to be able to do that. So good news, Neil, about that. Glad about that. Paul, just thought I'd mention that whilst the business falls out the government help for business rates, I've spoken to my local council who've agreed to defer the monthly business rate payments until August and then run over 8 months. Great. So yeah, if your rate amount that you pay excludes you from that small business grant, then yeah, as Paul says there, speak with people, try and get some kind of payment holiday or deferment. That's great, and that's good news. Defer monthly business rates until August and then to run over 8 months. Great, thanks for sharing that, Paul. This is what this is about. Joe Barnes, we've got increased demand for services and are able to respond. Staffing levels are good with very low level of absenteeism. Amazing, great. Thanks for sharing that, Joe. Eva, yeah, thank you. Keep them coming. Okay. Why should non-profits not be eligible for business interruption loan? Also, the banks will not give us a loan or overdraft to support cash flow. Okay, come back to that. I'm going to leave that as a question on the board, and we'll come back to that a little bit later on, if that's okay. Neil, positive week for us. Clients have been generally fast in coming back on projects. We have been allowing us to crack on with them and keep everyone working while being productive. Also had a few new projects coming in which they've been approved and already started on, so people are still doing business. Great. Yeah, so and I think there are sort of shoots of business coming back, of people realizing that it's not quite the lockdown. They're starting to interpret things differently, and I'm seeing a real mixed. But there are some businesses. I've got a client who supports pubs and restaurants with websites, and they are just absolutely on their knees. So thanks for typing those in. I'm just going to add a few more people, and then I'll continue to do that as I keep talking, and we'll make a start on the slides. Okay, I think we've just about got everybody in there. As usual, if you want to get my attention, do it in the Q&A box and raise your hand as well. So if I see hands going up, then that'll give me a bit of an idea that somebody, it puts you to the top of my attendee list because I can't see everybody all at once. I have to scroll down. So if you put your hand up, then it does put you right at the top. So let's just try that now. Let's just have a show of hands if we can. Let's see if we can get just those that have only just joined us putting hands up. Great. Perfect. You don't have to worry about lowering them. I can do that at my end as well. So if you do put your hand up, and you are trying to get my attention, don't lower it down. Let me lower it as we go through, and we can get that sorted. Great. And Zoe, you're the last one in for the moment. We'll make a start. Welcome everyone to this week's Crisis Productivity webinar. And of course, this is brought to you through the Productivity Programme, which is supported by the University of Lincoln, the ERDF Fund and Midlands Engine. And of course, quick reminder that there are lots of different things that now you're on the programme that you can actually have access to, from grant funding, academic expertise, graduate internships, specialist advisor support, the Business Angel Network, and obviously graduate startup funding. Talked about those in a lot more detail last week. This is session 3. So if you want to know a little bit more about those, then go and watch the session from last week and you'll hear me talking about it. Alternatively, there is a set of contact information which is on screen now. So you can look at the website productivityprogram.co.uk or email them or try and pick up the phone and see if you can get to speak to someone. I'm sure there's somebody still taking the calls there. Or, of course, you can drop myself or one of the team at Lincoln University an email or message as well. As always, I'm going to be your coach for today. I'm going to help you be aware of the possibilities in your business, educate you on some business best practices, and look for accountability. And the thing I want to do first and check in on this before we go through the topics that you can see on there, give us an update in the Q&A box of what you said you were going to do, what you managed to get done, and if you have something that you want to share, because there's been some good news shared there that people have put in there already, but if there's something that you did and it made a significant difference, just put your hand up and I'd love to take you off of mute if you're able to talk about it. If not, just type it in the Q&A box. But this is the accountability section. I want you to tell me what you've done differently since the session last week. So if you want to talk about it, put your hand up. If you want to type it in, then put it into the Q&A box and tell us what you actions you took away from last time that you've done something with. So I want to check that you're doing something with what you look. Now I know if you don't put your hands up, I'll start volunteering people very quickly. But I know Alan questioned the strategic plan, and he emailed me and got a copy of the strategic plan. And you know, Alan's already a client of mine, so we're going to talk through that in the next coaching session. I know Alex, we've spoken as well, and you're working on your strategic plan. So anybody want to share anything that would be good? So Moira here said, I contacted West Lindsey District Council and within 24 hours received a 10K grant. Very simple process to apply. My business eligible as we get small business relief. Fantastic, great. Well, there's a win-win, so that's good. Julie, I reviewed short, medium and long-term goals and shared the plan with the team. I have a clear plan on my priorities. Great. Yep, so Alan also examined the account, break-even point, cash flow, etc. Yeah, got a clear plan of priorities. Yeah, thanks Julie for that. Good. And this is the most important thing. Yeah, being on these sessions is good because you're going to obviously get your questions answered as much as we can. You're going to make sure that you learn some things, but it's important that we do something with the actions that we take away from it. So Neil did a bit more financial forecasting, longer term P&L, which was enlightening. As financial position was much better than I thought. Yeah, you'd be amazed, Neil, how many people I've talked to about their cash flow forecast when they've been applying for this the CBILS loan, the coronavirus business interruption loan scheme. And it's amazing how many people, when they've done the cash flow, had an idea of what they thought they needed. And generally it's been quite a bit different. both in a good way, but I've also had some clients that clearly haven't asked for enough. One thing I do want to just mention while I just thought about it then, I had a client the other day who applied for the Sybil's loan, as we'll call it, with Barclays Bank, and he applied for 19,000, not realizing that the threshold was 25,000. But rather than try and look at his finances and see what the value was for him just to increase the loan and take the benefits of the interest-free, no guarantee, what Barclays tried to do was direct him into a commercial loan with them, which was £19,000, quite a high interest rate, and it all had to be personally guaranteed. So just be aware that if you are looking at the Sybil's loan, and I know we'll come back to Joe's question in a minute, if you are looking at the Sybil's loan, the threshold for it is £25,001. So you've got to be above £25,000. Cash flow done this week because I have my grant. I can keep in the back until September without any business coming in. Great, so that's good to know. Diana, I applied for the 10K grant, no success so far. Do you want to ask any questions about that? Do you want to talk about that, Diana? Put your hand up. Let me know if you want to just ask anything about that and tell us which area you're in. That'd be great. You can take yourself off of mute if you want to talk about that. Tina contacted Charles Institute regarding increasing lowering the standards due to physical activity. Now request access to my online portal, so that's good. Yeah, always feel like I'm always doing things for free. Yeah, I understand that. And Kate followed up on outstanding leads and won a new client. Well done, Kate. We talked about that in one of the sessions. Also contacted suppliers and managed to reduce our overheads temporarily. Perkbox, which we mentioned before, has given us a 3-month payment holiday. Really? Oh, that's worth knowing. So you didn't have to turn it off, but they've given you a payment holiday. So that's good news. If you don't ask, you don't get. So it's definitely worth asking those questions. Have to sell mute? Yeah, no problem. But I'm with North Kesteven District Council, and I don't know the SBRR number because the landlord of my manager's office seems to be unavailable. Never had a separate invoice. Yeah, that's interesting, Dinah. And I can remember. Sorry, I remember you saying about staying on mute before. They should be able to find it from a company registration number and postcode as well. It depends if your company registered office address is where your office address is. Obviously, some people perhaps have it as their accountants, but generally they can track the company registration number back to the office address, and then you know, if you give them a different postcode, but I would keep chasing them on that. The one thing I would say, Diana, is I've had a few people that I've worked with that haven't heard anything, that are going around in circles, and just keep pushing. Those who shout loudest will get the result. So don't be frightened of chasing it up. Definitely not. Neil updated future vision, strategic direction. Great. Looking to set milestone goals this week's for 1 to 3 months. Perfect. No, it's not the registered address. Right. Okay. Again, if you've got an issue with that, Dinah, that you want to talk about, just drop me an email. But I would certainly get on the phone to them and push hard. There is no reason. Yeah, they're overwhelmed, but just keep pushing them. You know, definitely. Okay, just clear these out of the way. Topics. If you've got any hot topics that you want to talk through, if you've got any questions that you want me to answer, as Joe's put a comment up there, please put it in the questions and answers box. We've got a bit of a guest who's going to give us some tips on staying safe at home, which we'll talk about at the moment, staying safe in a lockdown, I think the slide is called. So we'll talk to Jay after this next topic. So remember, type in the questions and answers as we go through, and I'll be taking a look at those after each topic. So we'll talk about a topic, cover any questions, answers either on that topic or on anything else that might come to mind as we're talking, and then we'll go on to the next topic. The thing I want to focus on first is how we, if you go back to this slide, how we manage a remote workforce effectively. Now, some of you might say, well, I actually don't have a team. I don't have a remote workforce. But if you yourself are working at home, if you're a solo entrepreneur, sole trader, then this applies to you exactly the same as it does if you've got 100 people out there working remotely. And it really fits. You've heard me mention this before, this business hierarchy of needs. And this reflects Maslow's hierarchy of needs in the fact that we have to cover those base levels first. And if we compare it to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the first level is oxygen, it's food, it's water. It's the things we need that we can't live without for very long that are at that base level. Then on top of that, then we can put a roof over our heads, we can have heating, we can have warmth. But if we have a roof over our heads, but we have no oxygen, then what's the point of that? And it's the same with the business hierarchy of needs. You know, as we move up, as we've talked about sales, we need to get our sales levels right. We need to, and I know profit seems a bit difficult at the moment, but we covered that in previous sessions. But today we're moving a little bit up that level of hierarchy of needs to order. And obviously this is a productivity program. You know, we're not just here for the coronavirus, we're here to be more productive, to be more efficient. And this particular crisis is a good opportunity to help focus our minds on how we need to do that. And working remotely very, very much fits into that level of order, of efficiency. And I'm going a little bit back to my default way of presenting slides now. Obviously, I had all the other slides last week, which were a little bit more text, but now I'm back to my usual format, which is images. So when people are working remotely, and Jay will talk about this later on, what we have to be aware of is the isolation that we might feel, and also that our teams, if we have them, might feel. And it's important that they don't feel that they're on the edge of a cliff there, that we're looking after their, obviously they might be furloughed, they might be working remotely, but either way, if they're working remotely, we need to make sure that they don't feel isolated. They feel connected to our business. It might be that people that are working remotely think this is it, happy days. You know, we're on partial holiday now. I can put my feet up, work when I want, sit on the garden, enjoy the sunshine as the guys doing there, and you know, just kick back and not worry about productivity. You know, they might feel they're not being monitored. The image up there in the top right, as it is on my screen, sometimes as well, the other thing I find is that when people work remotely, there are really two types of people. There's the guy who will kick back and put his feet up on the table, and there's the person who will actually go above and beyond and struggle to cope. There will be people who struggle with technology. There will be people who struggle with distractions at home. So there will be those two halves. And when you're looking at your remote team, and when you're looking at yourself even, you've got to make sure you understand the different feelings that people are having. Feelings of being isolated, feelings of saying, okay, let's kick back, feelings of struggling. But whatever you do, what you've got to do is you've got to bridge that gap. You know, you've got to try and make that gap of being remote from the business as sort of well connected as you possibly can. I know I was talking to somebody earlier today, and they were talking about having phone calls for people, and it was the first time they'd ever used Zoom, which is becoming almost the new word for this type of video calling. It's a bit like Google, really, isn't it? We don't search for anything now, we Google it. So I think soon we'll be Zooming it. But they were on a session with me via Zoom, and straight away they said, wow, we can't believe how much different this feels because we can see each other. So whatever you can do, more communications as we've talked about in the past, but what you need to try and do is recognize people's behavior, recognize the alarm signs and the alarm bells that might ring of how they're feeling and how they're behaving, and try and bridge that gap as much as you can. So if you've got remote teams, think about those three behavior types, three types of ways that they might be coping, and then look at how you can bridge that gap. Is it about more calls? Is it about doing a face-to-face Skype, FaceTime, WhatsApp, Zoom? Because obviously, there's more than Zoom available. The other thing to remember, if you furloughed your staff, you can still check in with them. You can still talk about the opportunities of when work might start again and things like. Obviously, you can't work with them, you can't sort of give them tasks to do, but certainly you can still communicate with them. And of course, they can still do training as well, and we'll talk about that in a moment. So think about those behaviors. The other thing then to do when you think about working remotely is, as well as bridging that gap, and to help bridge that gap, make sure that people are reporting to you. Get people to give you updates, get people to email at the end of the day or the beginning of the day to tell you what they've been up to. I was talking to somebody the other day, and he has a check-in call at the beginning of the day and at the end of the day. And what we talked about is perhaps he doesn't need to have the 2 calls each day, but what he might need to do is keep that reporting at the end of the day, because that's really, really important. It might be a text message, it might be an email, it could be a full-blown report. So make sure that not only are you bridging the gap to them, but make sure they're bridging the gap to you as well, and make sure that they're giving you information. One thing to be a little bit aware of is getting copied into every email, BCC emails and things like that, because that can be seen as quite sort of intimidating. And I don't want to create a culture in any businesses where that becomes almost shaming people because they haven't done things, because you blind copied people in. So just be a little bit aware of that. The other thing when you're thinking about remote working is track people's performance. Okay. You probably have been tracking it in the workplace. If you haven't been, you need to. But what you certainly need to with remote working is make sure that you're tracking their performance. Look at the productivity that they're getting. How many hours are they working for the same outcome that they did before? So it's really important to track that performance, track that improvement. And you might understand that when they first start working remotely, that just bear with me a second. I'm going to have to send my wife a message, get my dog to stop barking just a second. So what you might find is that your performance drops initially. So I can't type and talk at the same time that well. But what you need to do is make sure you're monitoring that it's improving, okay? Because what we want to see as people settle down into remote working, what we don't want to do is see it deteriorate. We want to see it increase. So that's really important to track that performance. Give them some sort of way of perhaps looking at their productivity. The more you can get the ownership of them to track their performance, the better that is. The other thing there, and this is, I did a social media webinar some years ago, and that's a screenshot that somebody sent me. Simon says, spend 30 minutes per day on social media. And then Rod, who was on it, says, I will only spend 30 days on social media. Time is valuable. And the thing with remote working is it is about the structure. It is about routine. And, Rod there has a timer. When people are working, it's really important that they not only have a start and a finish time and they get into routine of the hours that they're working, but they also need to get into the routine of how much time they should be spending on tasks. Because when they're getting interrupted, when they're working remotely, very often hours blend into half days and get lost in other days. So it's really, really important that people monitor what time they're spending and what tasks. Neil's just put here in the chat box, can I share what we're doing that we find useful? Yeah, Neil, please jump in. If you want to take yourself off of mute, Neil, tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, so this was one of the biggest kind of concerns that I have, because we're creative, we're a creative company, and so we're all kind of making stuff, but the best work that we produce is the work that's produced collaboratively. So it's not just one person just sitting away and plugging away at a project and doing it. And obviously it's part of what we do is also a collaboration with the client. We've got quite a lot of animation work on at the moment. And so my animation team and so I kind of direct most of it and produce most of it, but our team are very empowered to go and kind of, explore things themselves and develop things themselves, and kind of required to do that. So so this kind of remote working and how that works was really, for us, was a kind of a key to making sure that we're kind of successful in this point. So we'd never used it before, but we set up Slack, and I know a lot of people use Slack for kind of internal communications, and it's been really useful. So what we put when we all kind of went off working remotely, we put like a massive email together for the entire team, the big kind of document, which is, this is what's expected of you, this is what we want you to do, for us, and this is what we will do for you in terms of checking in, and in terms of just ensuring everybody was aware that their jobs were safe, and were safe during this period. We weren't looking at losing anybody or anything like that. Explaining what we expected the furlough process if we're going to go down that road. But it's been really good with Slack. It stopped us sending loads of emails across, but what we do is, whenever we've allowed people to be relatively flexible when they start and finish, but they've just got to kind of check in and say, I'm starting now, this is what I'm working on during the day. It's a point in which we can have that kind of feedback. We can put up files, we can send people like screen grabs of what they've been recording, what they've been making, but also put when you're breaking for lunch, you can do video call over it. It's been really, really, really useful. I think the team's been really productive on it. So it's about, but also we've said, look, you don't have to be on it all day, because it's a real distraction as well at the same time if there's conversations going on that you don't need to be part of. So we kind of, from day 2 or day 3 of it, we kind of set a kind of protocol for it, and that worked out really well.
You're absolutely right, and one of the things I've seen businesses do in the past, and in the industry I was in some years ago in construction, you can end up spending all your day in meetings talking about stuff that needs getting done that you don't have time to do, because you're spending all the time in the meetings talking about it and setting actions. So it's finding that balance, isn't it? With Slack, do you use anything like Trello or Asana?
No, I have looked at Asana.
Project.
Yeah, I have looked at Asana and I think that might be something that we move on to. But at the moment, no, we're not using that. I think we've got quite good lead times on these projects anyway, so we're kind of cracking on. But the team have taken really well to working from home. We broke down our office essentially and sent it in bits off to everybody's homes. So everybody's got all the kit they need. So it's been really good.
Great. Yeah, thanks for sharing that, Neil. I'll just let you mute yourself up there. Kate's just put her hand up. One of the things I would say, just for I'll let you unmute yourself, Kate, is there's a book by a guy called Tim Ferriss, and it's an annoying book in a way. It's called The 4-Hour Work Week, and it's all about trying to get the business so that it runs without you. But there's some really good pointers in this book, because what it talks about are the tools that you can use to be remote from your business. And this is quite an old book. It's, I would probably read it 10 years or so ago. But the good thing is, things like Slack, Voxer, Asana, Trello, there's a whole list, particularly in his latest version of the book, that give you good tools. And if you look up and Google Tim Ferriss, I think he's got a website where you can get some ideas. But this whole book is about having a business owner that goes on mini retirements to month at a time, and he's remote from the business. And I followed his model some years ago and managed to do that. I used to travel all around the world and keep 5 businesses all up in the air at the same time by implementing some of the tools. And Slack, interestingly, was one of them. So Slack has been around for quite some time. So it's definitely worth doing that. Kate, yes, you put your hand up. You want to say something? I can let you unmute yourself, or I can unmute you, Kate, if you wish.
Sorry, I'll start again.
That's okay, yeah.
We've used Slack in the past, which is really good, like Neil said, for team communications. And we're using Trello at the minute for project management.
Yeah.
So that if anybody goes off sick, anyone can go into Trello and see what work they've started, what's left to be done and what's been completed for each client. But we also use timesheets.
Yeah.
So we keep Excel spreadsheets, timesheets per month for each client, and just note down how much time we spend and briefly what we did during the day for each client. And it helps at the end with client reports. So when you have to tell the client how you've been spending your time or their money effectively, you can say, we spent 3 hours writing this, or half an hour doing your social media, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So everybody's accountable in that sense.
Yeah. And of course, there you can use Excel. I've got a construction client who for quite a few years has used a piece of software called Toggle, which is TOGGL, and that's an online tracker. And if he can get bricklayers and joiners to track their time online, you can get an app for the phone, and you can just record what projects you've been working on. It gives all these projects a project number, and they just record how many hours. It's not one of these stop-start tracker things, but it does record how many hours, and they allocate time to holidays, they allocate time to dentist appointments and things like that. So he can allocate all the different costs of contact time as well. So yeah, timesheets is a good thing as well. Yeah, thanks, Kate, for that. Okay. Yep, Diana's just said there she uses Microsoft Teams. Julie uses Microsoft Teams as well. I know it's part of, as Julie said there, it's part of the Office 365 license. One of my largest clients, they use Microsoft Teams. The only thing I'm not sure about with Microsoft Teams is whether you actually have to be a 365 subscriber to join a team. So I'd be interested if either of you know the answer to that, because I don't have Office 365. Everything I do is Mac based. I don't have anything that's Microsoft based. I'm either Mac or Google. So I'm not sure if I can actually join somebody else's Microsoft Teams meeting. But yeah, I think, again, it's proving invaluable. People are really starting to find ways of communicating and being proactive, as Joe said, setting up a combination of different things, whether it's a face-to-face, a phone call, whether it's Trello, Slack, as Neil said. Yeah, all these things are definitely good tools that we can use. And I just wish I'd have bought shares in some of these companies probably about 6 months ago. You can't believe the difference it would have made. So thanks for that. You can join somebody else, Simon, but you can't set up your own. Okay, right. Thanks for that, Zoe. Okay, the other thing to bear in mind with remote working is that we need to make sure we've got the commitment from the team. We need to make sure that everybody that's working remotely understands the buy-in that's needed to go through the process. And one of the ways that you can do that is just to ask for that equipment. But also one of the things that you can do is get them involved in some kind of personal development. So furloughed staff, for example, can still do training, but also I'd encourage you to get your current team that are still working, get them doing some kind of training. One of the things I found is that many people are giving people these products, like Microsoft Teams, that was one. Trello was another one that somebody mentioned to me the other day. and they just got told, here you go, you're working remotely, use this. With no training, no commitment of why they should be using it, and no help and no support to use it at all. So if you are trying to get people working remotely and you're giving them the tools, get their commitment to use these tools, get their commitment to the process of working remotely, but also get them to undertake some training, tell them the structure of how they can learn more about this. And that's really important to do. I mean, Julie's just put up there is a Zoom plugin on Microsoft Teams that I've just installed to be able to invite external users to meetings. Put the meeting in our diary and gives a link. Great. Things like that are things that we need to learn. But what we do need to do is when we give people these new processes, we need to make sure that we can actually give them the skills that they need to use them effectively. Because talking on something like this is quite different. I see more and more people talking as though, because they've got a separate screen up where actually they're not talking to the camera. Give people some tips, give people some training of how better they can use it. And I'm going to finish off with one final thing here. As business owners and business managers that most of us are on here, it is about KPIs, key performance indicators. It's about having a dashboard. Okay, so all of the things that people are reporting on, all the things that you're tracking, all of these things you should be able to see from a distance on a dashboard. Okay, now a dashboard for me is like a car dashboard. I don't need to know whether I've got 37 litres of fuel in my tank or whether I've got 42 litres of fuel in my tank. I don't need the detail. What I need to know is either how many miles to empty, which is a good gauge, or whether I'm a quarter full or 3/4 full. So what I want you to think about now, while I just get a sip of something to drink, I want you to just stop and write down things that perhaps now things are settling a little bit. What KPIs, what key performance indicators would you put on your dashboard? Just have a think about that. It could be revenue, of course, it can be financial KPIs, but they could be performance KPIs. I don't know if Kevin's actually on this call, but Kevin, one of the guys I work with, at the bottom of his daily sheet has an emotional gauge, emotional thermometer. So when people fill in their daily reports, they have almost a smiley face to sad face type thermometer. He scores their emotional happiness. Where are they? Because the other thing, going back to that slide of isolation, you need to make sure that you can gauge how people are feeling. So KPIs aren't just financial. They're not things necessarily that you can apply a direct metric to. Sometimes it can just be scores out of 5, scores out of 10, or even is it a yes or a no? Am I happy remote working? Yes or no? Okay, so just have a think about it. Just take 20 seconds just to think about some KPIs that you can write down for your business right now. Things that you can monitor and make sure that the business is on the right track, that it's headed in the right direction. For those of us who are working on our strategic plans and our plans, KPIs are the best indicator to make sure we're staying on track and we're staying on plan. So if some of you have already mentioned that you've done some work on your plans, what KPIs would you say that you need to be looking at on a weekly basis? Now that's the kind of level we're looking at the moment, not monthly or quarterly. What dashboard could you look? You don't drive your car and then you look at the fuel gauge once a week. You're continually taking your eyes from the road down to the dashboard, back up to the road. So it's that kind of checking. What would be in your dashboard for that? And I'm going to hand over to Jay in a moment. So I'm just going to find, while you write some more things down, I'm just going to hand over to Jay in a second. I'm just going to promote you to a panelist, Jay, so you can be a little bit more engaged. There we go. Okay, if you've got any KPIs, if you've got anything else to share on remote working, then please let me know in the box there. But any KPIs would be good to share. So I'm going to introduce Jay now from Custodia. They're a tenant and occupier of Spark House. I think you're in Spark House, Jay.
Oh, indeed, yeah.
Yep. I always get confused as which part of the building is Spark House and Enterprise. And Jay is holding a webinar as part of this productivity program next week, as you can see from the slide there. And the reason Jay's coming on, one, he's going to give us some tips that we can actually use today in our business, but also he is unashamedly promoting the webinar that you all have access to. So you will all get an email about this, and he is here to really show you the reason that you need to be on this webinar. And for each and every one of you, of course, this is part of the program, so it's well worth attending. It's funded by the program, and there's going to be some great tips to take away. And I've worked with Jay for just a few months now, and I've just been amazed at the knowledge that him and his business partner Chris, who's also on this call, have in the area that they're going to talk about. So security, backup, continuity and compliance is their game. Over to you, Jay.
Thank you very much, Simon. I'm nearly blushing.
Good.
So one of the things we've noticed as we've gone into lockdown is that cybersecurity threats, instead of tailing off, have significantly increased. And a large part of this is that move to home. And I think Simon very clearly said it when he said routine and people's training to use certain technologies. When everyone goes to work, there's, whether it's an IT department or there's a routine around cybersecurity often, which when people are at home, there often isn't. And that's where we're seeing a lot of threats really arriving on the scene. So our webinar next week is really based around what cybersecurity actually is, how serious the external threats are, and we're going to show you live how serious the external threats are, how serious your internal threats are, all the various things that can go wrong internally, which let the bad stuff inside. And then really to go through what you can do as a business and an individual in the current situation to keep yourself safe. And ideally, what we're aiming to do is give you a whole bunch of free stuff that doesn't cost you anything in these times to really improve your security and not be the low-hanging fruit. And then we're going to end with a cybersecurity surgery with myself and Chris, who's our technical director, to really look at some of the problems you're coming up against at the moment and see if we can solve some of those for the group. What I did want to say to her, there's a couple of things that are absolutely key at the moment, which are things I would love everybody, whether you come to the webinar or not, to really look at today. The first one is we're seeing a lot of people who are using their default router logins. So all your home routers, you can log in to your home router. It normally tells you how to do it on the back of the router, and most of them have a standard password which you can search for on the internet. And it is one of the biggest current weaknesses that hackers are exploiting, is they are using normal default passwords to get into people's routers and can then look at their web traffic and do all sorts of other horrible things. So the first one is, please, if you haven't done it, change your default router password and log in. The second one we're seeing is everyone's moving home. The kids are at home. My kids are at home. They're all watching Netflix and all the other things that they do. And I don't want them on the same network that I'm on. So most home routers, again, you can split your networks in two different directions. The kids can have a home network and you can have a separate network with a Wi-Fi password. It's really simple to do, but it does keep your work safe. And the final one is, as everybody moves towards Microsoft Teams, lots of Google Drive. We've dealt with a lot of clients around Google Drive recently. I cannot stress enough to change your password regularly and to make it really complex. The cloud services are now a huge target. So look at your passwords for your cloud services. Are they complex? Are they difficult to guess? And finally, have you backed up the data in those cloud services? Because we're seeing a lot of data loss as people come to terms with using new technology. So those are my 3 top tips today. I hope that's helpful. And our webinar next week will go much more in depth. We'll be running a cyber surgery, and it's on, as it says there, Thursday the 16th at 3 p.m. We would love to see you all there. Thank you very much for the intro, Simon.
Thanks, Jay. Now I'm going to put you on the spot now. Has anybody got any questions that they want to ask Jay about this? And I want to touch on a few things that Jay's just said. I've had a few people that I work with who have seen a significant increase in spam emails. They're buying more online now, so they're getting parcels from Amazon, and then next thing you know, their inbox is full of spam emails that say, click here because your parcel's been delayed, or your parcel was delivered and nobody was in. I mean, I can't believe that nobody will be in when the parcel's been delivered at the moment, but possibly. So I know people who their home routers, as Jay just said, is admin and admin. Admin is the username, admin is the password. Most routers that you get at home from TalkTalk, BT, Sky, usually have that admin and admin. So you might think, well, who is going to come and sit outside my house and hack my router? But you'll be surprised how they will get in. And certainly passwords and data. Again, I had a client who was really worried because they've got everything on Google Drive. Their whole business is built on G Suite through an IT company that sets it all up for them. And their worry was that the IT company looked like they were a little bit dodgy and might go bust. And their worry was, if the IT company isn't paying their Google subscription, what happens to the data? And the very clear answer was that your data will just get turned off and you'll lose it, because Google do not back up your data. So Julie's put here, highly recommend a password locker. It's made home working so much easier for my team. Any suggestions, Jay, on password lockers or password sort of keepers? I might use LastPass. Any suggestions that you might give people?
We use 1Password. They are password locker. They are all pretty good, to be honest, and they do the same service. What I would say is just make sure it integrates with whatever browsers you're using, because what you don't want your password manager to do is to get in the way of you logging on. You want it to be a really seamless service. The other thing I'd say with all password managers is you obviously get some form of secret key that allows you to recover should you forget the main password. Make sure that's somewhere really, really safe. Write it down and stick it underneath your desk or somewhere because if you lose that, you lose everything and you can't remember your password, you lose everything in the password manager. So it's also making sure you have those things as well. And that on its own won't let somebody into your password manager.
Kate's got a question here for you, Jay. Will your webinar show us how to do some of the things, i.e. split networks?
Well, actually, that's the point. Actually, part of the point of the cyber surgery. So at the end, we're going to run a half-an-hour cyber surgery to do exactly these things. So if people aren't sure about some of the things we've gone through, some of the suggestions we made, we're absolutely happy to put those into the cyber surgery. The other thing you're very welcome to do, Custodia as a whole, our teams are really on hand to help people at the moment. So if there's anything like this and you just want to get in touch with us, drop us an email, give us a ring. I can't, hang on, I'm just going to put, can everyone see the Q&A, Simon?
I'm not sure. I think they can.
Okay, I'm just going to put our an email address in the Q&A.
Can I make a suggestion, Jay?
Yeah, okay.
Because I know from a university's point of view, what I would suggest is that you send it to Charlotte, and Charlotte distributes it, because Charlotte will want to distribute that through the program.
That's a great idea. I'll do just that. So
I've learned very quickly in the last 2 weeks to put everything through Charlotte. So yeah, I mean, Chris has put here, criminals do drive up and down roads. You know, if you are in an area where, you know, they can do that, you know, they're looking for it. You know, they're criminals in times like this are as desperate as business owners to make money, but they won't do it the business way. They'll go out and steal it from as many people and scam as many people as they can. So
it's what's
Julie's just
Chris Tebb, who's dived in there, is our technical director.
And Julie's just mentioned here as well, two-factor authentication. It's annoying. You know, I mean, just about everything I've got at the moment, they have to text me a code, and I have to put the code in to get. But it is about security and staying safe. So yeah, thanks, Julie, for reminding of that. Yeah. So thanks, Jay. And
thank you very much, Simon.
Yeah, as he says, you know, looking forward to see as many people on that webinar, which is next Thursday, 16th of April, 3 p.m. And don't worry, we'll give you the details of that again next week. And I'm sure Charlotte and the team at the University of Lincoln will be sending something out as well. So that's great. Thanks so much for that. Okay, moving on to the next topic, and this is the topic of overturning or avoiding linchpin redundancy. So again, this is part of the order section. If we want to be efficient, if we want to be productive, what we have got to make sure is that no area of our business relies upon a key member of staff. Now, you might say, oh, well, you know, I'm the business leader, you know, I should be the only person that's thinking about this. It's not. You know, linchpin, and I'm sorry if I've spelt that wrong, I can't remember whether it's got an I or a Y, but it's about making sure that if you have significant tasks in your business and key personnel carrying them out, that they should not hinge on that one person. You should be able to separate them out and get other people, might not be doing them as well as the other person. Don't get me wrong, we're not trying to just clone people into mini versions of the person who can do it. What we're trying to do is make sure that the business can still function, albeit it might be limited, but it's still functioning without those key people. Because as many businesses are finding at the moment, this is even more relevant because you're having absenteeism levels that you wouldn't normally see. So it's really important to look at this linchpin redundancy. And you know, a few things about this that I really want to get you to think about this. And it's a topic which I could just keep going and going and going and talking about. But the first thing is, what you want to do is look at the people that other people report to. So if you've got a manager, if you've got a supervisor, or even if it's not a recognized role, but they clearly are somebody that other people report to, other people work under, they should be people that you look at first. Okay, because they are the ones that if you take the one person out, that you might affect 3, 4, 5 or more people. Okay, so yes, look at yourself as that linchpin, but also look then at those other supervisors and those other managers. The other thing to think about then is, don't expect the other people that might want to take a part of that role or carry out a particular task if that person's not there. Don't expect them to jump straight in and fill the shoes. Okay, you need to have a growth plan. You need to have a development plan for the people who are going to carry out those tasks, those linchpin tasks. So make sure you understand that you've got to help people fill those shoes. Don't just parachute somebody in, sink or swim, and expect them to do it. The other thing, and some of you might be thinking, why on earth has he got an image of a clown with juggling there? Very often when we look at our business, we think that people have skills that are so specialized that what we can't do is replace them. We can't do that, and I understand that, and I don't disagree with that wholly, because you employ people for those skills, and there might be key people who have skills that nobody else in the business has got. But that doesn't mean that you can't teach somebody else some of those skills. And the clown in the circus is one of those positions that other people can jump into. The clown is able to multitask. They're able to juggle. They're able to unicycle. They're able to make people laugh. But it's about realizing and thinking that not everybody that has a specialist skill cannot pass that on to other people. So while you've got them, I had a plasterer in my company many, many years ago, and I had a decorator who seemed quite good with a trowel. So I put the two of them together for a series of weeks and managed to get the decorator up to a level where his plastering was good enough to do some of that key task. So when the plasterer wasn't there, okay, he couldn't do everything that the plasterer did, but the decorator certainly could fill that gap. So have a think about who in your business, what skills in the business that rely upon one person, and how you're going to help people grow and develop and pass those skills on. I'm going to share an image now, and this is one of the images from the silver bullets that I work with businesses, and I call it the apprenticeship plan. And by apprenticeship plan, we're not talking about young apprentice. We're talking about almost the sorcerer's apprentice, the master, the apprentice. And I want you to think about the way that this works. Very often people promote people, their team, and what they then do is they just expect them to do the job. And when they don't do a good job of it, then they blame them for being incompetent. They blame them for not doing the job that they've paid them for. And I encourage all of you to think about this apprentice plan with anybody in your business who you might be promoting and working with, or anybody new who comes into the business. They don't know how your business works. So you should go through this apprenticeship plan format. You can do it in a day. You can do it in weeks. You can do it in months. I was talking to Alex the other day, and he was telling me that it takes 3 months to train up his engineers to the level where he feels confident to send them out. 3 months. And in doing that, the time period is irrelevant, but the process is. I had a business partner who built his business up, a decorating business, many years ago, and he built the business up. He dropped people into positions. He didn't go through this program, this plan, and then every 2.5 years, he would sack all the senior people in the business because they're all useless. None of them were doing as good a job as he could do. And then he'd shrink the business back down, and he just went in this cycle of up and down for, he's doing it for the last 20 odd years. So what I want you to think about is, the person who is the master at doing the task, the master at doing the activity, they do, the apprentice watches. Then the master does, and the apprentice helps. Then the master helps, and the apprentice does it. And then ultimately, the master watches what the apprentice does. And that's where the KPIs come in, because ultimately, the master never lets go of the task completely. They are looking at it, they're monitoring it, they're tracking it, they're looking at their KPIs. Okay, so it's going through this process. Now, I'll give you a bit of a, pardon the pun, government health warning. Between 2 and 3 is a significant change, because the person doing the task, if you're not careful, when they transition between 2 and 3 and they go from doing to helping, and they see the other person succeed, what you've got to be careful of is the master doesn't start to sabotage the person who's taking over the task. So as these new people take away some of this linchpin activity, be careful that the master doesn't sabotage. It can be conscious sabotage, and it can be unconscious sabotage. And my business partner used to do that every 2 or 3 years. He would destroy the team because, and I tried telling him this, what he realized was that he didn't like suddenly becoming the least significant person in the business. He didn't like handing over that mastership baton to the rest of the team. And we should be aware of this as business leaders and business managers, but we should also be aware of other key people. And it could even be something right down to the basic level on the shop floor. If it's a key task, if it's a vital task, does it rely upon one person? So we really need to make sure we look at linchpin redundancy. I've just got a few people here that have put things up. So the continuity planning, should include this kind of linchpin redundancy. Chris has put that in there from Custodia. Having a continuity plan, making sure people can still get paid if a person handles payroll, is sick. It's those key tasks, absolutely. And if you build up a way of handling these tasks and a way of handing these tasks on to somebody else, then that's where the value is. When I sold my businesses off back in 2009, the value was there because the business didn't rely upon one person, and anybody else from the outside could come in and do the basic vital tasks that we needed. So that's where the real value is there. And thanks to Joe and Neil for sharing their key performance indicators as well. Okay, we've got one subject matter to continue to go through, and before we do that, I just want to open up to any other questions. We've covered a couple of things, well, 3 things there. We've covered staying safe in lockdown. Jay's given us some good tips there. We've covered off the managing a remote workforce effectively, and we've just talked through linchpin redundancy. Anybody got any questions or any comments on the linchpin redundancy or anything else that we've talked through? Sorry, Steve, I've just seen that you've dropped back in there, so I've just allowed you to talk if you need to. Anybody got? Yep, you there, Steve?
Yeah, sorry, I was just talking to a colleague who's just come in the office. Sorry, I've left. I'll mute you. Sorry about that.
No, that's okay. I just wanted to make sure you were there. That's the most important thing. So, any questions? Any questions on the apprenticeship plan that I've just shown? Any questions on business continuity? Or any questions on backups, security? I know obviously Jay's doing the webinar next week, but if you've got any simple questions that you might want to ask, any questions on applications for funding, any people that have got VAT payments, construction CIS payments, HMRC payments. If anybody's got any questions to, I know there's lots of information out there, but if anybody needs any clarification, this program is about answering those hot topics as well as the topics at the moment. Okay, I'll just give you a minute just to think about anything else and type those in. Get another drink. One of the other things, top tip for me, if you're doing sessions like this on quite a regular basis, make sure you've got a good workstation. I can't show you mine because I've got my laptop on it, but I've got a microphone, a snowball microphone that's in front of me. I've got a standing desk, so that's why I'm moving around. I'm actually standing up. I've got my iPad at the side of me, and I've got a little desk that's on this stand-up desk that I've got below. So I've got my drink on there. I've got my case for my AirPods. So when you're doing this kind of thing, make sure you're set up, make sure you're looking at interruptions, and as Jay said about splitting networks, that's something certainly I'm very keen on, because I've got a lot of our streaming, all of our TV is streamed. My wife's phone, she is always on social media and what have you on that. So I've made sure I've separated that. It doesn't help my overall bandwidth at home, but what it does do is it stops certain things crashing and getting affected by that. So, and I can actually throttle down hers. So I have a higher upload and download on mine than I do on the other network, because obviously when we're doing things like this, download is important, but upload is just as important. One other top tip that I would give you whilst we're seeing if anybody else has got questions, if you do have internet access issues at home, I think a lot of us are struggling because OpenReach and some of the providers are being throttled. One of the things to do is ring them up, tell them that you're working from home, and ask them to actually increase the upload speed. If you're doing video conferencing like this, I was with TalkTalk some 2 or 3 years ago, and I just rang them up and they increased my upload speed dramatically just because I asked. And it was I think it was 50 pence a month more, and that was more of an admin charge. And when I asked them why they didn't offer it anyway, and they said, well, if we did that, everybody in your village would suddenly bring the whole internet crashing down. So we only offer it to people, we give it to people who ask for it. So don't be frightened of speaking to your internet provider and asking them for a higher upload speed. It doesn't normally make a difference to the download. It might make a little bit of difference, but not too much. Okay, any questions? Anybody want to put their hand up and share anything? Anybody want to ask anything? Please put your hand up if you want to be taken off of mute. Other than that, we will carry on and then we'll cover any final questions. Jay will realise this, he's just starting doing webinars. When you ask for questions, you have to keep talking, otherwise you get this horrible tumbleweed silence as people aren't asking the questions or aren't typing their questions in. All right, just got a couple of people that have just joined or just dropped back in again. Okay, moving on to the final topic today then, and that is the topic which moves up another level of the business hierarchy needs. So order very much is about productivity. It's very much about efficiencies. But I want to just touch a little bit this week on impact. And this is absolutely vital for the crisis that we're in at the moment. And by doing this area of impact, what we need to do is look at our leadership. So this might be for those of you who are the leaders or should be the leaders in the business. Now it's time to step up and be a leader. And it might be that you are in a business and you need your business owner to become a leader. I don't know different people that are on this call, but each and every one of us, no matter what level that we're at, when we're in a crisis such as this, if we're going to have an impact on how we get through this, then we have to become leaders in our business. And as I said on a webinar that I did yesterday, if you think you are a sole trader, and again, I'm saying this, solo entrepreneur, so yeah, I've got nobody to lead, then you're mistaken, and you're badly mistaken, because what you have to do is lead yourself. You have to lead your customers. You have to be, in the times of crisis like this, the person who steps up to the plate and not only leads you and your business, but you direct your customers, you direct your suppliers, you direct your resources. You know, you might need to be taking direction at home more seriously. Okay, so we need to make sure that we understand that our leadership and the way that we handle that has a direct impact on how we're surviving right now, how we're dealing with it right now, and certainly how we get out of this and what happens to us next. Okay, because as leaders, one of the things that we must do is set the standards. We need to set the expectations of where we're going to be. So I want to ask a question, and this was a question that I asked in the boot camp that I did a few years ago, and it came from one of the books that's up on the shelf behind me, from Vern Harnish. Thinking about leaders and thinking about managers, okay, and I want you to understand this because it will help you with your managers as well. One deals with change and one deals with the same. Okay, so this is where I'm testing you all now to put something in the chat box or in the Q&A box, sorry. What I want you to do is, I want you to tell me, do you think leader is change or same and manager change, or same? And type it into the Q&A box now. Who do you think deals with change, and who do you think deals with same between manager and a leader? This is where those of you who can, interesting, Kate. So leader, change, Eva, leader, change, manager, same, leader, change, leader, change, leader, change, manager, same, leader, change, manager is same, leader, change. Yep, Joe, I know you just mentioned there you've got to shoot off early. I will dig out some information about the funding and see what is available for non-profits, and I'll get back to you on that. Leader, change, leader, change, leader, change, manager, same. Wow, okay, that's unanimous. You're all wrong, okay? And you're only wrong in the episodes of the book. But one of the things I want you to think is that a slightly different perspective. Okay, so you've all looked at it from the view that, you know, I used to look from it as well. But the leader is about setting the vision. Okay, so what you should do is make sure that as the leader, where you're heading, the expectations are the same. There's got to be consistency. Okay, there's got to be consistency in the destination, whether that's a destination that's a long way off or whether that's a destination that's in the next week or 2 weeks. So as a leader, we should deal with the same. Okay, our role, and those of you who are doing a strategic plan will realize that our role is to really look at the end game of the business, to look at the longer term vision of the business and make sure that everybody keeps that same focus. Jim Collins, in his book Great by Choice, said that the businesses who have been the most successful over the last 30 years changed their end vision of where the business was going to be by less than 10% over 30 years. The Amazons, the Apples, you think they're ever-changing businesses, and of course they are, but when you look at them, and this guy did a lot of research, from when they started, or when, 30 years ago, to where they are now, the actual vision of where they want to be, their identity, all of that changed by less than 10%. So you as the leader have to realize that your job is to make sure that everybody has the same vision, the same direction. Okay. The other thing then to realize is that the managers, and this is where the real crux comes in, and when we did the boot camp, this was a real eye-opener. The managers are the ones that need to do the changes and manage the changes in the business so that what you see is achieved. The vision of the business is achieved. So the managers are the ones that should be dealing with all the change. Now, you might say, well, I'm a leader and I'm a manager. And yes, I understand that. And as Mariah says, should deal with change together. Yeah. So if you're a leader and a manager in the business, definitely. But you almost have to wear two hats. You've got to wear the hat of the leader and set that set of tablets of stone of this is where we're heading. These are our values. This is our mission. This is our purpose. And then your role as the leader is to make sure that everybody sees that the same. Everybody has clarity of that. But then you have to understand that the manager in the business, whether it's you or other people, then the manager deals with the change. Okay. And when we're leading a business and we have other people that manage in the business, what we need to make sure is we understand the difficulty of change. It's not that people don't want change, they don't want to be changed. Okay, I've got a coach, Harlan, that I work with, and he's a change management coach. And that's a quote that he says, people don't mind change, but what they don't want is to be changed. So a manager has a real difficult job of getting people to do things differently and to achieve the results, because their job is to get the changes carried out to fit the vision and the direction that you've given them as the leader. Hopefully that makes sense. And it's interesting that you all put, so apart from I, who had a bit of a sit on the fence, everybody deals with change, and you're right, everybody does deal with change of some sort. So to be the leader, I want you all to think about, what do you need to do to become more? It's the same pair of feet and shoes, by the way. But as a leader, what you need to do is you need to grow. You need to step up. You need to learn new skills, particularly now. Okay, there is going to be change ahead. Don't get pulled into that change, because that's the role of a manager. That might be a role that you have as a manager in the business as well. But it's important that you take some time to develop your leadership skills, because you have to lead people through a crisis. If all you're doing is fighting fires and you've got your head down all the time, then you're just managing the business. Okay, what you're not doing is leading the business. And to get out of this crisis, to get through this, and to survive and thrive through this, each and every one of us needs to become a leader and improve our leadership in our business, myself included. Okay, there are lots of resources out there that you can get, that webinars, seminars, online training, books. You know, most of the books that are behind me, I've got one here that I showed somebody earlier on, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni. That's a good one for leadership. Ken Blanchard, that's just to prove it's a real bookcase behind me, by the way. Ken Blanchard is a great author that talks about leadership and management as well. So it's really important to make sure that we're getting all the tools that we need, and that we're starting to fill the boots of the leader in our business. If you've been the manager of your business and the owner of the business for too long, now is the time to step up and be a leader. And one of the things that you need to do as well as part of leadership, I used to have a T-shirt. I used to do go to a lot of motorbike racing and British Superbikes. We used to have a British Superbike team for about 4 years that I used to be involved in. And I went to a race meeting once, and I bought this T-shirt, and it said, "The beatings will continue until morale improves." Okay, and that's not good leadership. That's not good management. So as the leader, what you should do is be looking to celebrate success. So if you want to lead through this crisis, one, get the skills, become more yourself, but also make sure that you take some time and celebrate the successes, no matter how small they are, no matter how minor they might feel. It's really important to make sure that you celebrate the successes of the business. That's why I did it right at the beginning today. You need to recognize the wins. We need to give ourselves a pat on the back. We need to give our team a pat on the back. We need to thank our customers, thank our suppliers, wherever we can. Celebrate every little bit of success that we have. Okay, we've got to the end of the topics. I'm going to open up to any more questions and answers. I hope that's giving you a little bit of challenge of thought of the difference between leadership and management, and perhaps what you need to do to step up as a leader, and some of the things you can do. If there's anything you want to ask on leadership, then please type in the questions box. We've got about 10 minutes left before we draw this to a close. So I want to thank you for being here today and open up to any questions at all. It is a privilege to have each of you on this, and I really appreciate the input from people at the beginning and the way that you've all typed things in the Q&A box. The engagement of this is what it's all about, and hopefully you're taking value from this as well. So while you type some questions in there, just a reminder that the Staying Safe in Lockdown Cybersecurity webinar is Thursday, the 16th of April at 3 p.m. And there's the contact details for the productivity program as well. Any feedback on this, any other particular topics that you want covering, please drop them an email. They'll pass it back to me. If there's anything that you want me to talk through as a particular topic area, I'm happy to do that and build that into the slides and into the content as well. We've covered quite a bit today, both remote working. We've talked about linchpin redundancy and how you get those key tasks and key workers covered, and also making sure that it's not just managers and leaders, it can be anybody that's down there, and obviously leading through a crisis that we've mentioned as well. So any questions, this is where I get that lovely tumbleweed go across as well. I've probably blown your minds on all of this, or just bored you into submission anyway. The other thing I'd like you to do before you go, and I know I can see one person's just jumped off, but before you go, type in what you're going to do in the week ahead. So look through your notes, look through the things that you have considered, and put some actions, jot some actions down. You know, get 2 or 3 actions that you can do in the week ahead, and just type those in the Q&A box as well. So we've got a question here. Thank you. What would your advice be for working on the business? Is it easy to get so busy with the day-to-day delivery of services, but how do you plan for working on rather than the business? Any advice? Definitely. And please feel free to take yourself off of mute, Neil, about that as well. Two bits of advice, really. The first one is make sure you give yourself some time in your calendar. I do a lot of work with people on default calendar or calendar blocking, and it's really important that to set some time to one side, that people know that you shouldn't put any other appointments over the top of it. So for me, working on the business is about setting that calendar time in which you're going to do that. Some people do Friday mornings, some people might do Monday afternoons, some people might even, heaven forbid, do a Saturday morning, but it's setting time in your calendar. The other part of that is when you set that time to stay away from distractions. So turn off emails. Tell people this is a private time. This is a time in which you shouldn't be interrupted. It might be that you do this working on business with a team. So it might be you have to go away from the office, which probably isn't that hard for some of us at the moment. It might be go away from home, which is even harder. But take the time and take the separation from the firefighting in the business, and make sure you give it some focus. The second thing with working on the business is about looking at the plans. The best way you can keep yourself focused on what you need to be working on is making sure that the plan is being delivered. The simplest act of working on the business is to make sure that everything is working to implement the plan. Because working on the business is great, but if you're not working to a plan, if you're not seeing what development needs to happen, if you're not seeing what products need to be worked on next, that kind of thing really doesn't have any direction, doesn't have any leadership. So use the plan, make decisions against the plan, and look at how you can work on the business against that plan. So hopefully that's helped, Neil. And of course, if you need any more help with that, by all means. David, you taking yourself off of mute. I don't know if you've got a question you want to ask, or whether you just caught the button. David Burkhart. Nope, I'm just going to mute you up if that's okay. If you do want to just take yourself off of mute, then please just let me know. Just put your hand up or just start talking. That's no problem. Kate, redo my passwords and looking to splitting the router and changing passwords. Didn't even think about it today. Book on the cybersecurity webinar. There you go, Jay. There's one for you. That's really important. Yeah, most people don't think about the routers. They change their passwords on their accounts that they log in, but they never think about changing the account on the router. And that's the way people are going to get in. They're going to come through your IP address. They're going to come in through any VPNs that you might have set up, or any software that you're using. Zoom has had quite a significant issue with people hacking in on Zoom meetings and joining Zoom meetings without permission. I'll be reviewing business continuity plan with a view of what should happen if each team member gets sick. Yeah, absolutely. Moira, how important do you think being a collaborative leader is? I think sometimes I'm too inclusive, and that causes some members of my team to be too forthright in sharing opinions. Okay. I can't remember, Moira, if you are able to take yourself off of mute. If you are, let me know. I think last time you couldn't. But I think there is got to be a degree of separation. Okay. You can have multiple leaders in the business, but if you're working with the team, I think what you're doing is you're trying to blend leadership and management into two different things. And you do want people to be forthright. You do want people to share opinions. But for me, that is more at a management level than at a leadership level. You want input. You want, of course, to be challenged a little bit. But at the end of the day, the leader, as we talked about, sets things in stone. It's the same. So it's really important that if you collaborating with the team too much, then what you're doing is you're becoming a manager, and what you're doing is you're getting involved too much in the change, which is okay for that team. But I think separate the two. The role of the leader is to set the same, to set the destination, to set the objectives, to decide where the business is going, to set the expectations. And then I think what you're talking about, that collaboration, is more about then the management team doing the change stuff to make that work. Okay. Again, that's a great book, 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. Just get it off here. For what you've just talked about there, it's definitely a good thing. 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. I don't get any commission by promoting it, but it's a great book. It's available on audio and in hard copy. I think even on CD, if people still want to do that. But yeah, you've got to find your way of doing it. But I think you're right. Sometimes it can bite you, and it's setting those rules and those boundaries. So it's a great book to have a listen to. We're a small team. Yeah, doesn't matter whether it's a team of 2, team of 3, and to be, this is going to sound slightly crazy, but I think even working collaboratively in your own mind. I've had some very interesting team meetings with myself, where you have this voice on the shoulder there that you need to argue with. Any tips on motivation? Obviously, Eric, that's quite a personal thing that you've put there, and difficult to get going at the moment. I can understand that to a point. I've got a couple of friends that have had similar issues, but I think there's a very easy thing. It's gratitude every single day. I went to see Tony Robbins, the big, tall American guru thing out of Shallow Hal that hypnotized a guy in the lift. I've been to see him a couple of times, and I've got one of his CD sets that's up on the shelf behind me. And one of the best things that I found to reduce stress and to increase motivation is 15 minutes of gratitude. So he gets you to think about, on the CD that he has, about taking some time to be grateful for the things that are closest to you. So it might be grateful for waking up. I'm grateful for the sun that's shining this morning. I was so grateful yesterday morning because I had 2 barn owls flying around the fields at the back of the house as I was doing the horses yesterday morning. It's finding things to be grateful for. I'm grateful for the books that I read. I'm grateful for the car that I drive. And there might be some things that you can't feel grateful for now. So you've got to visualize what you can be grateful for. So certainly visualization is key to being grateful. Be grateful for the things that you have, but be grateful for the things that you want to happen, and say it as though it's already happened. Okay. And if you want to have a chat about that outside of this, I'm more than happy to do that. The other thing is set those goals, set those small, achievable, short-term goals that you can then celebrate that success of having achieved. And when you celebrate it, don't just sit there and go, hey, did really well. Fine. If you're really looking for motivation, treat yourself. It might be a cream cake. It might be watching a particular film. It might be having one of your favorite bottles of wine. Pick something that recognizes it and rewards you for those achievements. Hopefully that's helped, Eric. And if you want to talk a little bit more about this in this, that can do, of course. Yeah, attitude of gratitude. Adam's just put there. Yeah. I used to get really stressed and anxious going back to 2005 now, and people are just amazed at how I cope with stress and anxiety, and it is all by having that 15 minutes of gratitude. And if you want to look at Tony Robbins as well, he's got a webinar tomorrow night. For me, Tony Robbins is the world's best at motivating people. You know, I went to see Tony Robbins to get enough motivation to get divorced. We'd had an adoption that had gone horribly wrong. I realized I love my wife to bits, but just that much that if I was ever going to be a dad, we couldn't stay together. Went to see Tony Robbins to get motivation to get divorced, and ended up coming back with the opposite motivation to really make the marriage work. And the following year, my wife and I went down to see him together, and we did the whole 4-day webinar down in London together. So yeah, if you want motivation and you want to watch videos or listen or sign up for his podcasts, his blogs, Tony Robbins, absolutely, as long as you get used to the American accent, absolutely incredible guy for motivation. Interesting to hear your thoughts on Eat That Frog, book by Brian Tracy. Found it valuable for remote working. I think Eat That Frog for me is important for remote working in the way that it gets you to prioritize things. So I use Evernote, and what I do is I set all my tasks each day into the categories that Brian Tracy talks about. So I make sure I complete the biggest, ugliest, hardest task first, and then get everything else done after that, which is what the book talks about. So Eat That Frog is very much about time management and priority of tasks, and it's a great tool. And Brian Tracy, if you want any help on how to prioritize tasks and get things done using things like Evernote, Brian Tracy's got some amazing tools for that. So thanks, Neil, for sharing that. Eat That Frog, really useful to help your team deal with those important tasks first. So we've just about gone over the hour and a half, over 90 minutes. If anybody's got any final questions, please feel free to put them on. I'm just checking I've made everything else. Moira's ordering 5 dysfunctions of a team. Yeah, that's great. Again, a good leadership and management author that does lots of audio books, lots of physical books is Ken Blanchard, Blanchard. Bit old school now, but still really relevant. As well as all the other authors, you know, that are out there, Brian Tracy, Zig Ziglar, Jim Collins, you know, all these guys. But Patrick Lencioni and in particular Ken Blanchard are specialists in leadership and management. I hope that's been of value. Again, contact details are there. Don't forget Jay's webinar next Thursday. We'll still be in the same place on Wednesday, same time, same links. You'll get all the usual reminders. And if there are any topics in particular that you want to talk through, just either email the productivity team or email me directly. I'm happy to add anything. And if you've got any questions that you suddenly are watching the recording and you wish you'd have asked, then please reach out to me. I'm happy to answer any questions and offer any support in between. And I'm good to see lots of goals being set in the question and answers. Make sure you do something from what you've learned today. And I really look forward to seeing you next week. And all that remains is to say, stay safe, stay healthy. And of course, for the moment, follow the guidelines and stay indoors. Bye for now.